Hi, everyone. This is Richard Harris over at Sales Hacker. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are very, very excited to be talking about this sort of new digital approach to buying and selling that's come along. And we've got an outstanding guest with us, Bill Butler from Journey Sales. Bill is the CEO and has created this great company called Journey Sales that has smart rooms, which we'll kind of talk about later, but that's not the gist of it. We're going to do some thought leadership stuff today. But Bill has been in sales for a very, very long time. He's been at Journey Sales as the CEO for the last 4 years. Spent some time as CEO of Vivido Labs and iPipeline and quite a few other things. So graduated from Penn State University and Boston College with an MBA. So Bill, thanks so much for joining us today.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Great to be here.
Yeah, no, we're super excited. You know, we're going to talk about how to build an account-based sales approach, right? And you know, I know you've been doing this with this company for about 4 years. And before we jump into sort of your presentation, I'd love to understand maybe the genesis of Journey Sales. If you're you know, truly as an account-based salesperson, which is all the rage the last 18 months or so. But you've been doing this for about 4 years with this organization. You know, I sort of put you up there as sort of the Neil Young to grunge rock of account-based selling in the 21st century. Could you tell us a little bit about sort of where Journey Sales even just came from and how you got into this concept?
Yeah, happy to do that. And by the way, Richard, before we get going here, I did get a couple recommendations for the name of our event today, and one of them was two bald guys talking about sales. So for anyone who saw the invite, you know, we got to appreciate a lot of history, a lot of experience comes through that.
Absolutely, right. We've lost each one with its own painful, unique experience.
That's right. That's right. You know, I like to say proudly that a lot of the ideas, we got for Journey Sales really came through, a lot of the toils that we do in day-to-day selling. So, I've become somewhat of a sales nerd from the fact that not only do I like to make sure we can grow companies, but trying to understand not just what we do, but what others in the market are doing and other kind of complementary areas like marketing automation and beginning to see all that. And seeing today how, sales teams struggle, how sales reps struggle, really trying to formulate a plan, an idea, something that moves sales from this old and more antiquated world to something more innovative, something more kind of customer first. And that's really how the whole thing happened. This goes back even well beyond 4 years. I literally started a paper notebook 10 years ago, taking down ideas, which became an electronic notebook. And I've had, pages and pages and documents and ideas and ideas and ideas, which brought all this together.
Right. Well, that's great. Well, let's go ahead and get the presentation going. And by the way, to the audience, as you know, with most Sales Hacker webinars, please, I am by all means monitoring the question section. I'm monitoring the chat feature. Please feel free to go into the chat section and introduce yourself, the name of your company, anything you want to sort of share about what you guys do, and keep the questions coming throughout the session. We don't try and hold them till the end. We like it to be a very interactive webinar. But why don't we go ahead and get started and give some people some thoughts.
Great. Thanks, Richard. Yeah, I think the driver behind a lot of this too is not the fact that, we just want to do digital because it's cool and selling. In fact, we're doing it because our customers have already changed. Our customers are buying differently. They're engaging with us differently. And it's going to be permanent. There's no way of kind of going back to the old way. So this is really recognition that, the struggles we may be feeling in selling, might not because we're just executing bad sales processes, that our customers, in effect, aren't responding because in many cases, they're doing things differently. So when you really look at what's changed for the customer, what's changed for our buyers, just the vast amount of information that's out there today, the requirements for them to do extensive due diligence, they want to make decisions that literally are risk-free. And as we know from, research out there that, there's 6.8 decision makers, right, that get involved in a decision. So you can see just the complexity of what goes on today in our customers' decision-making process. And you realize why, sales stall along the way, not just because, again, we may not be executing perfect sales cycles, but our customers stop along the way because, one of the 6.8 decides that, hey, not now, but maybe later, and that will stall us, or they just can't reach consensus decision-making here. what we end up seeing is that, the most successful organizations, the most successful sales teams are not just executing great sales cycles, but they're making it easier for our customers to buy. And that's a core component of this new transformation around account-based selling.
That's great.
So kind of yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, this is
before
my
we jump
part.
into this. So before we jump into the serious stuff, we wanted to have a little fun with ourselves here, and if we can't laugh at ourselves sometimes, right? What fun is it? So this is our top 10 list of things we never hear our customers say. Okay, we never hear our customers say these things. And if you're fans of the Netflix series Stranger Things, this would probably be called the Upside Down, right? So we're going to poke a little fun at ourselves here. So we never hear our customers say, send me more emails, right? We know they're overwhelmed with emails today. They're drowning in emails. And we never hear them send us emails with lots of attachments. And, we understand that, after long sales cycles with lots of emails and great attachments, our customers love to go in there. It's like a treasure hunt to try to find those attachments that they need to help make the good decisions here. When they finally get, the guts up to stick their email in and download a white paper, before that white paper is even completed the download process, we know they love to get their phone to ring and be able to start that conversation even before they actually got to read the white paper.
So I'm gonna ask you a question, right? So I go in and I teach this stuff, right? Going back to that last slide, part of it is, I think, not just that they're annoyed by the phone call they get from the white paper, but I also think some of it is just the messaging that the rep is using, right? I think sometimes it has more to do with the fact that if we could teach our reps how to call in and be courteous and kind in a way that says, look, I'm just here to be a resource for you, rather than, hey, I saw you download a white paper, can I set a meeting? Right. You may be able to help yourself. But again, I assume you have white papers on your own website. Like, what do you guys do in your world, right, with your sales team?
Well, we do that. I mean, we make it. And I think the other way of looking at your comment on that, Richard, is there's great information in these white papers. You look at the time and effort and the research that people put into this. The sad thing on that, it's not getting consumed the right way. It's not landing on our customers and our prospects the right way. And that's a real sad thing, because there's probably great insight that my customer, my prospect, will want to learn about their business and their industry, but because of our approach to it, they often, will just stand back and not do it at all. And to me, that's the real struggle in all this.
Yeah, and I've seen that too. And maybe I should go and download a white paper and run you through your own test. But for me, the one thing that I've always wanted people to do in white papers is literally just say in that first page, by the way, here are the 6 things that we're going to cover in the white paper. These are the 6 takeaways. If you want the details, read the rest of the white paper. Right. Because they're looking, for me, white papers are sort of like proof of life, right? That we have this great information as hostage, but we spend so much time fluffing them up with these long diatribes and these elegant pictures, and we perfume the pig so much that even the customer doesn't want to read it anymore. And I think that's maybe even where, like, the infographic has really stepped up, whereas I almost feel like there should be a law that every white paper should have an infographic at the beginning, and then if people want details, they'll go look for it.
No, I love that summary. And, people learn differently too, right? We all consume information in different ways, and, the white paper may work for someone, but not other people too. So I think we have to be kind of agile in our own thought process here in terms of what information can land with my target customer, and they can begin to consume it. But I agree with you. It's bite-sized bits of simple information, which ultimately is what compels my customer to kind of move forward.
I love that. Bite-sized pieces makes the customer move forward. I love it.
So the fourth thing we never hear our customers say is they admire good old sales tricks. And I think one of the ones that I've heard great things about is this whole idea of, local dialing presence. So, I know when I pick up my phone and I see it's from a local area code around where I live, but then I realize that the person has tricked me into it and they live, thousands of miles away. In many ways, that's not the best way to begin a relationship, is guess what I would say on that one. Our customers can't wait for the next cold call, right? The colder the better in many cases here too. But again, we continue to drive through the process over and over again. We don't hear our customers say, my day is not complete unless a first meeting is taking place with a vendor. We measure our sales teams, right, on first meetings,
Right.
but shouldn't we ask in the upside down world that our customers actually measure themselves on taking first meetings with vendors, right? Wouldn't that be fair in the upside down world, I guess, right?
That's funny.
Nothing like great band questions, especially, in that first call, right when you're starting to develop maybe the minimalist report, but then we go into, trying to qualify the hell out of the client, right in the very beginning here. And it feels like that kind of awkward moment. So we know our customers, in the upside down world love getting band questions.
Yeah, that's funny because I teach this all the time. I love people tell me they do BANT, and nobody does BANT. They claim that they do. Because if you truly do BANT, you're supposed to start with budget. And there's not anybody that I know that's going to start asking, a Gen Xer like me about my budget first thing out of the gate. Not to mention the fact how you're going to do that if you're, someone new in their sales career, often early out of college, that, it's just not going to sound good. It's going to come awkward. So, as I've said for a long time, BANT is dead. And particularly, I think, and you can tell me in the digital world that so much of what we're seeing and selling and talking about, there isn't even a budget for, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like, they've got to find something as okay, we're going to spend X amount on sales tools or a sales stack or a marketing stack. So it's not even that there's a budget for that like it used to be, right? Like computers you can have a budget for, right? How many laptops do I need to refresh this year? That's a budget, right?
Right.
But it's totally changed.
Or you're competing against known entities. Like I kind of know who I compete with when I compete with like companies, but what you're really struggling with here is you're competing against other things that have nothing to do with what you do, but it's other priorities in the organization. And how do you sell around that, right? Can you sell around that? That's the question that comes up in a lot of cases with BANT.
Yep.
Again, nothing like the empathetic customer that wants us to be successful, knows selling is hard, thinks buying is easy and wants to make our sales process a lot easier for us because they're empathetic.
Right.
Here I take a little fun at something else called, they all want to be challenged. And this goes to your comment, Richard, right? So nothing like, a 20-plus year executive, sitting in a suite and getting a call from someone who's never worked in their industry before and challenging them. That's something we know our customers in the upside down world look forward to that.
Yeah. No, I teach, one of the things I teach all the time is that you kind of have to earn the right to ask questions. And once you've earned that right, well, then you can sort of start to ask some of those tougher questions. But so many times we're just taught to sort of grill them like it's a job interview, or it's just terrible. So but I like that one a lot too.
Well, some of that, you just talk about that. It's the give and the get, like anything in life. I've got to give you something to get more back, give you more, get more back. And it continues to progress that way. And unless I get into that give and get mode, I'm not getting it. I just can't go in and begin to challenge you and expect to get anything like a reasonable return on that.
Yep.
So the last one, number 10, that price seems right. We never hear our customers saying that. So, the price is its own negotiation, its own sales cycle at the very end. So, again, just trying to have some fun with some of the stuff that we do today. The reality, though, there's a lot of truth to those things. Even though we poke fun at them and, we try to make it somewhat comical here, a lot of these things are actually rooted in many of the practices and programs that we're working on today. So let's begin to kind of take a look and see what this future may look like here. I think the good news for us in the sales profession is that, the fundamentals haven't changed. They've never changed. They probably never will change relative to the way, customers are looking for, ways to solve problems, right? They still have problems in their organization. In many cases, vendors, technology, solutions is what solves that. And they know that. They make those investments on a continuous basis. And those fundamentals are still there. But I think one that gets lost in a lot of this too is the whole concept of relationships. And when you think about an account-based model, we have to think about developing strong long-term relationships. We use those two terms like land and expand in accounts. And conceptually that makes sense, but are we fundamentally executing programs and methods to get ourselves expanded into those accounts? Am I building not sales relationships, but really consultative relationships? The whole concept of the trusted advisor is really what we're looking to accomplish here. Those things aren't changing and haven't changed and probably never will change. But the bad news on this is our customers have changed, right? And we just know that, if you're in the sales world today, you know that based on your day-to-day sales activity. When you look at some of the performance data out there, I think I saw something recently that said, reps would be about 50% of the reps will hit quota this year, and it's down 4 years in a row. There's some reasons for that. And again, it's not that we're just getting bad at selling, that things have changed on the customer side. So, we kind of begin to try to understand what can we do differently here now.
Yeah, and I'd love to talk about that for just a second, because there's a couple of thoughts. So one, I've seen that same data report too, and there are a couple of reasons for it. One, if at some point only 50% of the people are hitting goals, then the people setting the goals are making some mistakes, right?
Sure.
People are getting greedier. They want to become millionaires as CEOs and board members and founders off the backs of their salespeople. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had where the CEO's like, well, I don't want to overpay my SDR. And I'm like, really? Like, you're concerned you're going to overpay someone who's just out of college by an extra $500 a year? Like, that's keeping you up at night? Like, that's
right.
Not your problem, right? So I see that as one thing. The other thing I would say that, and I'll push a little different, I will challenge you, respectfully. Is
we're both old enough to be challenged, so that's good.
Okay, fair enough. All right, or be challenged. Is that I do think some things have changed in the sales world. I think John Barrows has said it best. He's one of my friends and mentors. Is that the average salesperson is not going to survive as we move forward, right? You can't be mediocre anymore. You're going to have to get better at your craft, far more so than I think. You and I didn't get a lot of sales training growing up unless you went to Xerox or IBM or something like that, So I think that's shifting in one way. I do think that the reps have as much knowledge and more knowledge about their customers as the customers have about, what they're looking for. So I think that has actually helped sales reps. The challenge is nobody's taught them how to use that knowledge for good, right?
Right.
At least in my experience. So we're still making the same bad habits and bad mistakes, even though we have better and more knowledge. So from that standpoint, I agree with you on sort of this good news and bad news stuff, but I'm eager to see what you see changing in the sort of digital experience, right, as we move forward.
Yeah, no, well, I think one comment on that, too, is we always have a tendency to, so we're a great sharing economy right now. Information gets shared vastly, and in sales, too. What was that story that went back a few years ago? The best time to call a customer is, Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock or Tuesday at 5 o'clock or something, right? So when that got out there and got publicized, what happened? Everybody called.
Right, everybody called, right.
And then what happened? It became the worst time to do a call.
Right.
The whole concept of social selling, it had some great merit at some point in time, but what do? We overwhelm the social airways with information and posts and ways to get more and more information out there. And the customers just naturally back away from that because they can. It's the choices they make on how to engage. They have control. And because we overwhelm these channels in so many ways now, every time we find something new like that, we just throw everything at it, and all of a sudden customers back away. And that's what's part of the problem today. We're doing it from our perspective, but not from the customer's perspective. And that's where this whole shift has to begin to occur here.
Yep, I completely agree.
So this is where we start talking about, and this is the time of the year, right? So we're at the holiday season, right? So, our B2B customers are B2C consumers, right? And we see that happening all the time. They're buying more and more. Every time you turn on the news, you're hearing some new statistic about, online consumer behavior. And it's funny, I jotted a few down just to kind of share today. So, 51% of all purchases today are now online. And 50% of consumers will buy at least something online within a year. The one I think that is most remarkable, again, just to reflect how online consumer behavior is driving us overall, is that the market cap of Amazon alone is greater than the combined market cap of Walmart, Costco, Target, Macy's, and Kohl's. So it just starts giving you a sense of what's beginning to occur here, old versus new in retail, but we can start applying that same to our sales world and saying, my God, if I'm stuck in the old world, am I Macy's or am I Amazon, right? So we're looking to be Amazon in the way we think about selling and the way we want to approach our customers. But again, a lot of it's back to our customers. They're in control. They've got, the control to say yes or no when we start flooding the airwaves with information and content.
No, that's great.
So when we start talking about this concept of account-based selling, and I know everyone's got different definitions of it, and it's because selling is sometimes the rougher element to marketing. It's the bad child in the group between account-based marketing and account-based selling. I've heard all these things before, but it really is. I mean, we've been selling to accounts forever, but what we haven't done is begin to understand, how in the age of digital this can begin to kind of transform itself. We've seen it happen in marketing. Go back 10 years, right? So marketing has changed quite a bit. Inbound and outbound marketing, all sorts of tools and processes and techniques, and really it drove the whole wave of content marketing through that. But when you look at sales, we just haven't had that same type of advancement. No one could be convinced that CRM is a transformational technology for selling. Right? It's a platform, and it can track certain things. It's great inwardly based, but it doesn't help me really engage with my customers. So this is kind of our definition of what we kind of describe as account-based selling. Tried to make it as simple as we can. Didn't try to overly wordsmith this thing, Richard, so I wanted to make sure it passed your test. But, we look at it really as kind of a sales. No, look, it's important. I want you to basically endorse me for this stuff. So now this is important to me. But we see it as a sales, account management, and customer success program. And the emphasis there is we're trying to manage our customer from multiple perspectives and multiple angles here. And obviously the goal is to develop, right, more opportunities in the account and grow revenue and grow relationships is what we're really, trying to do here. The difference from everything we've done before is we're trying to flip the model now. We're trying to make this much more customer-first approach here, which is a different concept than we've done before. Everything we've done historically has been drive sales, outbound, with probably little recognition of really how this lays and layers on top of what my customer is doing today. So, we got to think about developing opportunities and not stopping along the way. And this is one of my big pet peeves. Somebody launches a new product. They don't understand why it's not taken up in the market. Well, having one meeting with a client around a new product isn't going to engage them into a sales cycle, right? We have to learn what it takes to develop. It's the educational components. When customers may love it, but they may not be ready because of the priorities in their business, et cetera. So think of development really as one of the most key elements in the maturation of our pipeline. Selling is selling, right? We're trying to drive a sales process, but remember, we're also trying to make this easier for our customers because, so many sales cycles stop or stall along the way just because our customers get overwhelmed with other activities.
Yeah, we have a great question coming from the audience, which is, account-based sales is awesome, right? Like I think everybody gets it, and again, for you and I, it's kind of been around for a while, but I think what's old is new again, and it's been able to be refined and improved because of technology, and I think because of our willingness to re-educate ourselves. One of the challenges that I see, and this is coming from the audience too, is their question is, when you want to adopt an account-based selling approach, it feels like it can actually slow down the sales cycle, although it's possible that your conversions will increase. So you have this challenge in sales where you're always being, sell, but then when you take this account-based approach, management doesn't want to hear that approach might take longer, right? It's kind of like the same thing with social selling. So any thoughts around mistakes you can try to avoid to prevent it from being slowed down too much, or that's sort of the question or comment coming from the audience. So I'll stop there and let you sort of feedback off of that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell it from the perspective of, I know I want my salespeople focused on taking qualified deals and closing them, right? So that's where I want them to spend their time. That's going to drive the revenue. But what happens when a sales rep has a great month or a great quarter, right? They spend all their time, going through the closing cycle, right? They're not in developing. So they close the quarter. What comes? I have nothing left or very little to actually put into my next quarter. So this whole concept of development is instrumental to really, the way we engage our overall pipeline. So the question really is, are we are we actually slowing things down? No, actually what we're trying to do is create higher quality and quantity of pipeline. So for example, in my overall pipeline, I'll use that new product introduction example. I may create a digital experience, and maybe I don't do it. Maybe my product team does it. So they're working on my behalf, helping to target my customers and educate them on some new ideas and new products we're bringing to market. I'm not equipped to do that now because I haven't been educated enough on the new product, and I have experts that can do that. But I can still focus on the things that I need to do to close. And by the way, some subset of them will begin to move themselves through their buyer's journey and into the top of my funnel. And then I begin to engage with them at that time. So the concept here with account-based selling is that we have a continuous engagement model here. Because so much of sales is we have a call or we have a meeting and the follow-up isn't there, or the customer postpones us. And it's remarkable what happens if you can keep a continuous educational cycle going with your customers. How much they learn and how much they'll engage with you, and ultimately how much better your sales pipeline ultimately becomes.
No, I completely agree. So what I just want to make sure I'm sort of summarizing what you're saying. When you first start this account-based approach, is you really need to look at it above the sales funnel into the marketing funnel, so that the stuff that goes from the marketing funnel into the sales funnel is more captivating or compelling as in terms of quality.
Yeah, and I like to think of it as a team game. Sales is a team sport, right? So, again, I may be focused on a great quarter, and I'm going to do great this quarter, so I got a lot of stuff to close, but when I'm doing that, it's at the expense of me developing these existing accounts. Can I use technology, digital experiences, other resources in my company to help develop other things that I may not be equipped nor have the time to do? When I can accomplish that kind of coverage, I know I'm representing myself. And by the way, because this stuff is digital, there's data there, I can see what's going on. I may be a passive participant at that point in time, but I'm still involved. It's still my account. I'm not giving control up by any stretch, but people are helping me along the way here.
Great, thank you, and thank you for the question. So please keep them coming.
Yeah, great question, and it really does go into the management side too. And again, personally, this is something that I've seen the best companies that I talk to out there, and I'd be curious on your feedback on this too, Richard. Is the organizations that not just sell really well, but also understand the value of managing clients after the sale. Those are organizations that always seem to do better with an account-based approach. They're getting, the direct result of after-the-sale account management isn't always obvious to organizations, but they intuitively understand it. They know that if I onboard them correctly, if I have ways of sharing best practices and ideas, my customers ultimately use my solution better, get more value out of it. They become advocates for us in the market, and ultimately I expand more in the organization. So that's something, too, that falls into this framework.
Yeah, it does, and I will define it slightly differently, I think, is that many times people are all about, well, what's that experience like? What's it feel like for the customer? It doesn't matter what the experience feels like. It's all about how good is your process. If you don't have a well-defined process, I can assure you the experience is going to be equally poor. So you've got to be addicted to the process of owning your customers and think about it from a process perspective, because that will help you find and drive towards the right experience you want them to have or that they want to have.
Well, I'll tell you a great story on that one. I had met with a customer recently, and they had built an onboarding process. 90 days was the time cycle. And they managed this thing over many years because they were having trouble with retention and growth in accounts. And they pinpointed it down to this onboarding. And they said, if we did an A-quality job in onboarding a new client in the first 90 days, not only would they retain, but they have the highest revenue per account of anyone. If we do a B job, and they grade themselves based on their performance, if we do a B job, there'll be some maybe upsell, cross-sell there. Retention will happen, but not consistently, so the numbers are absolutely lower. When they do a C job, they can predict those are the accounts that absolutely will not retain with them or will greatly reduce the usage of their product. And what they found, too, is they spend an enormous amount of time then trying to keep those Cs alive, where if they just would have made that investment up front to make this an A onboarding situation for everyone, that's the secret formula.
Totally agree. Completely agree. You've got to make those early customers wildly successful, not just happy.
Absolutely. And their first experience with you, those first 90 days, right? It's like dating, right? There's a point in time here that,
Yep.
you know, I want that experience to be great. I made that commitment to you. I bought this from you. I've made my organization turn on its head to work with you, Mr. Vendor. Now it's your turn to give me that equivalent experience. Ramp me up the right way, onboard me, make me successful.
Yep, totally agree.
So this is the way we kind of define account-based selling from our understanding and our kind of research in the market. And, you know, the way we see this transforming in the digital world, as you can imagine, is first and foremost, it starts with the digital customer experience. But for the B2B world, this is, you know, this is that whole idea of what do I have, you know, in the B2C side that I can try to apply into the B2B world. So can I get my customer, will they work, you know, in a customer experience that's different from what we do today, like emails, phone calls, and all those other crazy things we do. And very much like on the consumer side, once I have them in an experience, right, I can begin to analyze their activity. And again, it's not just to be creepy, because that's not the intention of it. If you really think about how much guesstimation we do in selling, right? You know, I sent the proposal out and, you know, my coach said, yeah, it's going to happen in the next 2 weeks. But, you know, does my coach even know what goes on internally? You know, we don't have professional buyers out there, so they don't know all the time what's to occur. You know, what happens if the CFO decides not to do anything in a conversation that he or she had with the CEO? That can stop these things dead in the track. So we need to be able to analyze so I can, in effect, execute better sales cycles, right? The more I know about my customer's activity, you know, the better I can be at really executing sound sales cycles to the right people with ultimately the right information.
Yep.
And just to emphasize that, again, this is just, you know, graphic that looks today, you know, at the buyer and seller process, right? You know, we talk about 6.8 decision makers, but, you know, for every decision maker, there's an influencer behind that decision maker. So you're really talking about, you know, 10 to 15 people that at some point in time touch your process and need to be engaged. And like we've talked about before, you know, sales is a team sport. How do I get my team together, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times, and I'm sure you hear this too, Richard, you know, organizations just struggle internally getting their team aligned, right? So, you know, think about a worldwide strategic account. You got people in various locations around the world. You know, if you can't execute a plan internally to then execute externally with a client, you're ultimately going to struggle. And again, that's just the complexity of today's world. And then add all the information on top of that. So every customer, every persona of my customer, you know, likes different content, looks at things differently. My CFO customer wants, you know, an ROI study and associated return information, and my business sponsor wants to understand the business impact. I got technical buyers, and I've got purchasing involved, and you know, it's a lot of information that we're trying to pull together and manage all this disparate activity. And again, you can see why sales reps give up, and in many cases, customers stop in the middle of the process.
Yeah, it's a bit nutty, right? Like this is, it's, you know, it's funny, they keep talking about the number of people that are involved in the decision-making process of the buyer. I just sort of looking at that, it kind of makes me wonder, I wonder how many people are involved in the selling side, right? As you said, so if there's 6.8 in the buying side, there's at least 3 that I know of who are engaged on the selling side. Well, now all of a sudden you got, you know, 9 people you're trying to manage, right? You really have to quarterback these deals in a very different way, particularly as you get to the larger enterprise deals. So, but let's keep going.
And,
so.
Yeah, and even if you do, you know, even if you do a great job delivering your message, you know, it takes one of the customers, one of the buyers to say, and they don't say no, they say not now. The not now is the death sentence for most sales cycles. And it only takes one of them to say, you know, Johnny Jones and Sally Smith said not now, and you know, we're going to look at this next quarter again. You know, because they can do that in many cases, and that's just the state of today's selling.
Yeah, well, I also think that's the state of today's sales rep not understanding how to get a better answer than that too. Like that's coachable, right? Like that's a very coachable thing. So.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you got it. So let's begin to look at what this experience could look like. So what we're trying to do here, again, bringing the digital world, you know, into our B2B sales and customer experience world to try to bring them all together. So how do I bring my buyers and my sellers together in one experience with the right information? Again, we're talking about, you know, the right content, right, to the right people at the right time. You know, I'm not trying to overwhelm people and just throw them to a website. I'm trying to, you know, engage with them appropriately. So if they're in an early educational phase, you know, I'm sharing information and content and in fact people that can help make an impact there. when I get into the middle of a sales cycle, it feels differently, right? I'm beginning to, do deeper demos. I'm beginning to go through deeper technical reviews if I sell a technology-based product. And obviously, toward the end, I'm talking about price and ROI and justification and statements of work. And, I'm not going to overwhelm my customer with that stuff. I need to be able to drip this stuff out at the right time so they engage appropriately, and my team engages with them also. And I need to understand the engagement cycle. Again, just like we see on the consumer side today, right? On consumer sites, it gets spooky sometimes, right? Because you're searching on Google for something, and you go to Amazon, and they're showing you the exact same thing that you searched on another site, and it's like, okay, how the hell did they figure that one out? But they do, and that data is all readily available. We're not at that level of creepiness on the B2B side, but we do want to understand basics about our customers. So in effect, who's engaging with us? And some people only engage for a relatively short period of time. So it could be a month or so where somebody came in, they gave the look-see, they gave a thumbs up, and they kind of departed from the sales cycle. You see that often. We may have some people that are, more passively involved. They come in and out a little bit, but clearly there's buyers in here that become our coaches, our sponsors. They're the ones we want to see that day-to-day engagement with too. So, there's different analytics that we're expected to see, because there's no way I'm expected to see all my customers active all the time. They just have to understand, am I getting the right people in? Did the CFO come in, and did he or she actually look at my proposal? If they did, I get a sense that activity is going to occur the right way, because I know that's a gatekeeper in the process.
Right. And what so excites me when I see this big graphic at the moment is just the length of the email threads that I can expect to see, right? Because right now that's sort of how we do this, right? It's one big long email thread. So I know there's a better way. So I'm looking forward to your expertise on that.
Yeah, no, best intentions. Look, if email would work continuously, we would have still done it, but it's just not working the way we want it to do on the selling side anymore. So, that's why we're talking about this new brave world. So again, just to talk about what's out there today. So you think about digital experiences. They're not new. Obviously, we've done customer portals for many years. You see a lot of it, on the support side, not as much on the selling side, but you see it on the support side in many cases. We've heard of LinkedIn Point Drive. They announced that over the summer. Google is.
I don't even know what that is.
Well, good.
I don't even know what Point Drive is. All right. So
good. Forget about it. It doesn't even exist.
8 hours and hours a day on LinkedIn, and I don't know what that is. So
that makes me happy. In Google sites, Google's doing things there that, people are looking at and applying and say, how can this help me engage with customers better? And Google's a fantastic company, and who knows how they'll evolve that over time. And yeah, of course, my favorite is what we're doing here at Journey Sales and Smart Room. So again, not to make it a product pitch, but again, we see this as kind of the landscape of the market right now. And we kind of broke it down to, kind of 5 core elements. So what do I need to do to take a web experience and make it kind of, B2B? Again, a way that can help execute my sales process, but again, more important is my customers will engage with me in that process. Again, we see it around people, content, collaboration, analytics, as well as my sales process or my sales play. So again, you've got to have your selling team and buying team in there together, right? So, and again, I'm not putting everybody in there right away. When it becomes qualified, then I bring in, my subject matter expert, the big kahuna that, came out of the industry and can help me move this thing forward. We talked a lot about content. Again, timely, relevant content to the right person at the right time. Again, yeah, this stuff's an email, as you mentioned, Richard, but again, it's not easy to find. It's not easy to digest. This is a way of trying to organize some of this stuff better. I think what gets unsaid in a lot of cases is all the threads of activities that occur, in the course of a sales cycle, right? So a sales cycle is made up of many different smaller closes or smaller sales cycles along the way. So, how can collaboration, how can I improve some of that in a way that, I'm driving more things in parallel than serial? I see so many sales cycles that look like they're step-by-step processes here. And that's just not the way customers think or operate. Can I act, in parallel in a much more agile way, creating activities there where I'm, trying to close the business side while I'm trying to get the technical team up to speed and also beginning the contract process with legal. I've got to be able to work that way and collaborate that way to really drive more efficient sales activity. again, we talk about analytics, but again, it's looking at it at a personal level, the contacts that I have in accounts, the people I'm working with, how well I'm engaged. But in account-based selling, I want to see the landscape of my territory, because I know, there's certain accounts I'm really good at, and there's certain ones I'm okay at, and there's certain ones that haven't shown up yet, right? So how do I begin to look at that landscape and begin to understand now, how does that impact my sales execution, right? So I look at it at an account level, I look at it at a territory level, and it really helps me to drive a sales process that we hope in turn, creates the right type of customer engagement through the account-based selling model.
So how many places, if you think about, as I'm a sales rep and I've got someone, I'm going to ask you this question a couple ways. I need to measure all of this stuff, right? Right now, is it mostly still being done with just emails and what you're plugging into your CRM system? If I'm trying to measure these different plays I'm running or who these people are, and what are reps normally doing right now?
Yeah, and I think the data that they're tracking in CRM is very inconsistent, and in many cases, it's interpreted information, right? We say, look, we need to perform discovery, and I note in the system I did discovery. Well, how do I know if the discovery actually worked or not? Did it even do it? But, those are the things that, I'm putting very interpretive information into the CRM system, and when you sit through account reviews and opportunity reviews, it really becomes a function of there's very little data that you see in those reviews. A lot of it is the gut instinct of the account team, right? I know this, I think that, I know this person, I know that person. So the whole formulation of the strategy really comes back to, a few people, in some cases one person who may be the account lead, coming up with their guesstimation of where really things are. And,
right.
I think gut instincts are great, and we follow them in many ways, but we need to balance that with data. Like, we've got to be able to have a balanced perspective here and begin to look at things in a more data-centric kind of model.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So again, just a quick sneak preview. When you want to look at what a customer experience looks like, these are the types of things you're going to want to see. Again, first and foremost, we always talk about people, right? Because selling is still a relationship game here. But again, in a customer experience, I may start one-to-one, as most do, and then it'll evolve over time. So more customers get involved, more of my sales team gets involved, and I need the experience to kind of support that. And one thing we always talk about is, like you go into consumer sites, it has to be enticing. I have to feel like this is something that I want to work in. A customer experience can't be, a C drive. It can't look like something that's in the cloud in the C drive. That's not an engaging experience for a customer. So it has to have the presentation element to it that, when you put that in front of a customer, they look at you and say, you know what, thank you for that. That is something that's transformational. That's something different. That's something unique. That's all about when we talk about the experience.
Yeah, it's interesting because this looks a lot, my experience with something like this, my only experience with something like this was Chatter within a sales organization in Salesforce. And, Chatter kind of does a little bit of that, and Salesforce tried to make it a collaboration suite with your customers, right? As I remember correctly.
They did,
you're
right.
The problem was that if I had my own login to Salesforce, but then I was going to work with Journey Sales as a client, I would have to log out of my own Salesforce instance and then log into the Journeyforce chatter room or chatterbox or whatever they called it.
Right.
And so the friction there was super, super high.
Right.
But is that what you're getting at, is that we do want this sort of centralized place to run all this information from with the sales rep or the sales team and or the customer? Is that where you're headed?
That's exactly where we're heading. And the stuff that Salesforce did with Chatter, again, I'm rolling back, this goes back now probably almost 10 years, is, they came up with this whole concept, and it ended up dying, but social CRM, right? And Chatter was at the centerpiece of that. They actually put a whole Salesforce in place within Salesforce to sell nothing but Chatter as a social CRM. And it didn't take, and it didn't take because the whole concept of Chatter or similar collaboration capabilities doesn't reflect the way customers want to engage with you. And that's really that's the difference. That was a sales-centric approach to try to collaborating. It was just email on steroids. But when you think about, again, take it from the outside in, how do customers want to engage with you? You need to really think the experience from that side through. And that's, I think, the difference of where we are today in the B2B world versus where we were, 5 and 10 years ago.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think, one question I always sort of get concerned with too is, and again, because this is kind of what you guys do, it's not kind of, it's what you guys do, is does the customer want to go and monitor one more thing, right? So they're already monitoring their email, they're already monitoring Slack, they're already monitoring LinkedIn, they're already monitoring their Twitter feed or whatever, right? There's so many places, right? So just out of curiosity, as you look at it from this account-based approach, and certainly, obviously, I know you have customers who love this kind of stuff, but
sure.
Truly, what's the temperature like? Is it still a hard thing to get people to think about this one other place they need to go monitor stuff, or do they genuinely get it?
Yeah, it's not funny. We know people have surveyed end customers, right, coming in, asking them how they like these types of experiences. And it's simple. The grades come back very high, and it really comes down to two things. One is it's just a very better experience for them, but it organizes things. It's easier for them to get access to all this information, which could be, again, new product information. It could be about a sales site. It could be onboarding information. Whatever it might be, I have easy access to this information that historically could have been through many, even hundreds of emails, right, that I have to sift through versus having everything presented to me in a much more organized way. It shows the investment I'm willing to make to my client, and I think they react in a positive way.
Just out of curiosity, and again, this is off the top of your head, of the people who really like something like this, what percentage of them do you think use Slack?
I don't think it's very high, honestly. I think Slack has great purpose in certain segments of the market, but it hasn't made its way, into the sales and customer world yet. We're still very content-centric, much more than collaboration-centric. I think it's getting there. We're seeing more and more of that, so it's a great question. It's evolving, but it's not a high percentage yet. It's interesting. Some of the stuff we end up seeing is when you see this environment, people will do Slack-like stuff with the technical team, right? Because they're more comfortable with it, they're more familiar with that. That segment of it will work with that. But you won't find the broader sense of executives and other people, engaging that way. But I think you will see more and more of that. It's beginning to take heat in the market a little bit more.
That's sort of what I'm wondering is that as people adopt more Slack-like tools, because you guys are very different than Slack. I'm not suggesting that they could do Slack, but because maybe Slack has broken the initial barrier of collaboration, and if they're like, oh, this is, like Slack on steroids and 10 times better, maybe that's, I think that, that's helpful in many ways. So.
Well, the thing with Slack is it's the group concept. So that's what's really transferred into here. It's like, again, the difference of a website is everything's there for everyone. But can I organize the experience where you only work in a certain group? So the technical people kind of see just the technical stuff. Yeah, and that's the whole concept there. It's creating that group concept, which I think Slack has become famous for. But it does manifest itself in these types of experiences. Absolutely.
Yeah, completely agree. All right. Great. So where do we go from here? So here we are trying to take this, as a digital experience and making this analog experience much more digital in 21st century.
Yep. I think as a sales profession, I always look at this first and foremost because I love the profession I'm in, and I hope I can eventually leave a mark on this profession the right way. I think this is like anything else. We have to realize we're at a point in time in the market where we can't just keep, shuffling the decks on the Titanic here and expecting things to change, right? The definition of insanity here, right? And we're in the planning cycle right now for 2018, right? And, people come in with good ideas, but I guarantee you, and I've seen all this, and I get access to a lot of this information, it's the same stuff, but just rearranged in different ways. So, I think we're at a point right now, honestly, where we have to take, a bolder step forward as an industry and begin to look at this thing, again, not just inwardly in the selfish way of we are with sales, but really ways to engage our customers. And sometimes it may mean, maybe not being as aggressive in certain ways in the way I sell, but trying to look at the customer in a much more holistic way. And I think we're there. I really think we're on the doorstep of that right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. So sort of, again, we've sort of alluded around on a couple of things, but just like, help people understand what you guys really do, because you guys really are a thought leader in trying to create this greater sense of collaboration. What does Journey Sales do, right?
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Richard. We founded the company really kind of with the singular purpose of saying, okay, how do we build a technology to help salespeople? And we knew CRM is out there. We didn't want to build another CRM. We wanted to build on top of it and say, what actually can make sales reps more successful? And it really became that whole idea that to improve selling, you actually have to improve buying and make that whole process work together better. So that's really, what we fashion ourselves as a, transformational sales technology, built on the B2B side, that really helps the sales teams connect and engage across their account base in a much more effective way. So yeah, and it's the only thing we do. We don't do anything else.
That's great. So I can't remember, is there a couple more slides, or are we?
Yeah, I mean, this was just the final takeaway here.
Yeah.
So, again, just the quick summary is everything we said here. It's about making it easier, this experience, the content, and again, account-based selling needs to be a customer-first approach, and that's the final comment I'll leave to people. If we don't think about the customers and how to engage with them, our sales process basically fails then.
Yeah, it's one thing to talk about account-based sales, as we've discussed. It's another way to execute on it, right? And I think you guys have built this very interesting platform to help that occur. Sort of as we move forward with the multi-decision maker, buyer, and seller with the group. So, but Bill, this has been great. Thank you so much for sort of educating us on this, letting us know how to make this more of a digital transformation than sort of the standard analog we've been going through. If people want to get a hold of you, Bill, what's the best way to do that? Is it a LinkedIn thing? Are you a tweeter? Like, what do you do? Oh, hey, look at that. There you go.
You can email me. I'm on LinkedIn. Just Twitter. Sales2Butler is my Twitter handle.
Great. Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much, and a big thanks to Journey Sales and your team behind you, because I know they really put a lot of effort into these slides and making sure it looked great. So thank you to you and all of them.
Thank you, Richard.
All right. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.